Morning, everyone, and welcome to a new session of the new research seminars. We have an external guest today, Carmen Martinez Vargas, who is a postdoctoral researcher at the University of the Free State in South Africa, and is part of the Sharing Higher Education and Human Development Research Program, right? And she's presenting today. She's worked on capabilities negotiation in the Pan-African and post-pandemic university perspective from students activists. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the invitation to be here today. It's quite nice to see the faces after the seminar I gave a couple of years ago online. So it's quite pleased to be here. So I know the group is kind of multidisciplinary, so I hope we can have a multidisciplinary discussion at the end. And I just want to apologize in the name of my colleagues that were unable to join us today. Really unfortunate situation because they are still waiting to see whether they will be able to come to Ingenium. But I'm presenting today I'm presenting because this is part of a project that I'm collaborating with three of them that we're going to come forward with Mikateko Matabula, Faith and Monansi, and Bertha Kibona. So I hope, they are here somehow in a way, even if I'm the one presenting. I'm calculating that I'm going to talk for 40 minutes. I hope it's not a lot.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yeah, the seminar lasts 1 hour, so yeah.
Okay, so we will have.
As you wish, but yeah, have some time for questions. And discussion will be nice. Yeah.
So we will have around 20 minutes for discussion. So I just want to mention that I'm going to explain about the project, where is the project based and who is coordinating us. But this is kind of preliminary findings. So it's not really final because the project is ongoing and now you're going to see about the process. So I'm going to spend quite a lot of time, telling you about the process because this is much as important as the end and the outcome.
You want me to go, Esther?
No, it's fine. Yeah, now it's working. Yeah. So I'm going to start talking about the PSF network, which is planned for transforming education for sustainable futures. Then I'm going to explain about the background of the project. I'm going to mention briefly the aim. I will go for the process and the negotiations, and then I will discuss what we're trying to make sense of in the results of internal capabilities, combined capabilities, and the aspirational Ubuntu-supporting institutional capabilities. So the TFS network is a global network which is trying to understand how education systems can act as drivers of sustainable development in India, Rwanda, Somalia, and South Africa. And this is funded by the Global Challenges Research Fund through the Economic and Social Research Council Network Plus scheme. And this is coordinated by the University of Bristol. So we are part of what we call the South African Hub, and it's around 10 to 15 projects that we are doing in that South African Hub. And then we had our first meeting in May, and then we're going to meet again in July and December. And our project is the only one who is based on higher education. So the other projects are more in the school, high school, or informal sentiments and informal educational groups in communities. So the duration is 1 year. It started in November last year and it's gonna finish in November this year. And the team is composed by 4 researchers from the Higher Education and Human Development Research Group, plus 13 activist students who are researchers as us. And we have also one administrative person who is helping with all the admin matters of the project. So our approach is participatory research, but we don't want to give one specific name because there is a lot of debate about what is this, what is that, what is that. And this is coming from all our practices in the center, right? And all the thinking that we've been doing throughout the years. And basically we're trying to push the boundaries and bring it in a way that makes sense for us. But as I was mentioning before, what I'm bringing today is kind of grounded data, and it's what we have so far, and we are still making sense of it. So you will see when I go into the findings and discussion with all that. So what happened in the literature when we are talking about sustainable development in higher education is that we have literature in sectorial areas like approaches and method, communication, research, sustainability learning, academic profession, but also especially on campus operations as energy audits and things like that. But when we kind of zoom out into the student area, then what we found is a area that focuses on courses and curriculums. But most of the literature is focusing mainly on how to teach students the best way to be sustainable. But it's not much talking what the students have to contribute to these discourses of sustainability. And this is especially important in the global south. So, so what happened is like this, there is little relevance of a student perspectives because these are kind of global agendas that are imposed into the university as directives that they have to follow. And there is also a little emphasis on the oppression suffered by communities in the global south through sustainability priorities. Because if many of you know the context of South Africa, there are many other priorities that are more pressing than sustainability at the moment. And it's not that sustainability is not important, it's just that we need to understand sustainability in other terms that are different from Europe and other global north countries. So there is little knowledge about the locally based informed sustainability movements within a student body and other university collectives, besides policymakers and management imposing top-down. But as Leal Philo says, you know, the principles of sustainable development are not universally understood, and we have to take into consideration, as Thomas Trujillo says, that this internationalization and imposition of sustainability is colonial and are in itself manifestations of colonialism, and we need to ground it on the resistances from bottom up. So that is where our project is coming along, and we wanted to, the main aim is to co-develop a conceptualization of a sustainable university community that will inform an action plan for an African indigenous locally centered conception of higher education for sustainable futures at the University of the Free State with a student activist. So here, what we were looking, it was not only to understand what sustainability means for these activists that we are working with, and we have worked before the project, so it's a long-term relationship with them, but rather create an action plan that is locally based at the institution where we study and we work. So the process, this is the nice part. So the project is divided into 6 different phases. And phases 0 and 1, it was all about negotiation. And this started even before the project was approved by the University of Bristol. So because as I was telling, we had long-term relationship with some of these groups, and this group know other groups and so on. We started talking about this project, what they will be involved, what they will expect from the project and so on. And that happened from April to December last year. And then once the project was approved in December, it was the more formal, like we sit down and then we change everything that we need to change before starting the project. Because obviously for the funding, we needed the project, but obviously after we get the money, then we renegotiated it. So we had this phase that we were negotiating, and I will explain later how many terms needed to be changed and so on. And that's the reason when we were drafting the research questions, we were saying African, indigenous, locally based, because we didn't want to give a label yet, because we needed to understand it with the group. In phase number 2 is the internal exploration, and it's like the core phase of the project. So the core team, which is the activists together with the researchers, this is trying to understand, what this terminology means, how do we conceptualize a sustainable community, and so on. And then once this phase is over, we go to what we call articulation of ecologies of knowledges, which is like, it's not that ecologies of knowledges is not done throughout, because it is with different activists from different political agendas, but rather understanding that our knowledge was limited internally, so we needed to expand it. And then we started looking for other collectives and epistemic gaps that we have within the core group. And this one, we're still busy, so we have a workshop, and then now we need to come back with all this feedback to revise all the what we call the internal research questions, which are focused on this phase number 2. And then now in the future, we have the storytelling production, the dissemination and action plan, and the final engagement and collective evaluation. So the thing is, what we did is to have a more dialogical phase. This is more, we have a written document with the answers to all the research questions. And it was more like with activities and so on, but also with a lot of analysis with the whole group. And then now we're going to go into the more symbolic kind of space with the digital storytelling process. So yeah, just to mention a couple of things more about the phases that we were busy with, and what I'm going to discuss today, which is part of phase 2. In phase 0 to 1, we had to change a lot of terminology, research questions, and ethical considerations. So what we did is just to go throughout everything, and then we figured out that sustainability did not represent our own understanding. Especially because it has a lot of political meaning in South Africa and for activists. So we changed it to Ubuntu because it's not about maintaining but transforming and creating this fluidity and flexibility towards like dignifying humanity and recognizing each other. So it took quite a long time to decide about Ubuntu, because obviously we don't want to romanticize the term, we don't want to come back to this, like Ubuntu everything. And it's funny because we're still thinking about it, because it might change to Upilisana, which is a Zulu word. But yeah, so far we decided we keep Ubuntu. We will see what happens in the coming workshops. And the ethical considerations were really interesting, because we had all these negotiations about the ethical considerations that we needed for the project. And we found out that it's not enough to do it in a pre-project phase. So it's like kind of an ongoing process that needs to have someone responsible for it, so we can look at the specific circumstances of each challenge that appears in the group and in the research process. And in terms of phase number 2, which is what I was telling, is like the more dialogical and kind of analysis based. Here we were meeting, in general, we were meeting every 2 weeks, one Saturday from morning to evening, and working the whole day together. And then the most intense phase was phase number 2, in which we combine analysis from transcripts and revision to answer the internal research questions. But this was not done by us, it was done by everyone. So what we will do is have activities trying to uncover our own assumptions about the world and the different practices that we defend as good. Because what happened is like the whole group had different, has aligned, many values of what we consider is aspirational. But when we were taking that into the practice, it was completely different. Everyone was saying no to achieve this, we need to do this, and no, we need to do that. So the point was finding emergences and communalities from an aligned view towards bigger aspirations to change our institution. But this was not a reductionist kind of understanding, but rather trying to keep the plurality of the group and the different visions. And as I said, it was kind of this reiterative that logic space analyzed and devised by the team, by the whole team. So what we did is we have all the workshops with all the activities, and then we will voice record the sessions, and then we will have the transcript, and then in the last workshop we will come back, and from all what we had, we added as well the transcripts, and then we were expanding from there. So no one's voice was left behind. It was more because of that, more than going into the standards of qualitative research or anything like that. And then the phase number 3, which is what I mentioned, is under the assumptions that we have incomplete understandings of the world and based on the research. So then what we were doing is listing collectives and individuals that we needed the input in the answers to our research questions. And of course, this is done in an imperfect way, and we're still trying to figure out how it's going to be the best way forward. But what I'm going to present today is part of what we did here and what we have as the internal research questions. So there's no view outside the activist group and the core team. So what happened is like, imagine we're like 16 people trying to make sense of what we have. And it's like a funny and interesting task. So the thing is like, because in our center, we research with capabilities, and it's kind of grounded with the capability approach from Amartya Sen and Martin Usman. We took it as, okay, let's see what happened. And then we were making sense with the whole team. But we are not sure this is going to be the end or what we need. We're still exploring. So I just want to mention a couple of things about the capability approach, because I know some of you are familiar, but some of you might not. So the capability approach was trying to challenge understandings of human development in terms of measuring how the GDP was affecting the economy and so on, to try to be more people-centered. And then Amartya Sen what says is that we need to look at the freedoms, what he calls the scholars in the field capabilities, which are the real freedoms that people have to do the things that they have reason to value and be the person that they have reason to value. And this is not only a perspective for understanding human development in different ways, but also understanding well-being and the well-being of the communities. And it's kind of challenging conventional sociological theory, because it's not only, first of all, it's not a theory in itself, it's an approach. So it's leaving the open-ended space for understanding. And it gives a lot of importance to what is locally valued, and therefore, what do we have reasons to do to improve the conditions of a certain community. So therefore, human development is not what a international organization says, but rather what a community have reason to value and how they want to be involved in that process of development or improving the well-being. So it's normative, it's aspirational, and it's evaluative, but it's not trying to tell us what is development or what is well-being, because it will be plural, right? And that is what brings the capability approach there. So with all the answers to the research questions, I'm just going to focus on this because I thought it will be interesting for the group. And then here, what we were trying, these were the questions about what the students have reason to value. So we wanted to situate ourselves, to be clear and open about what we all, the team, have reason to value. And then we came up with a distinction between internal and combined capabilities, because we had the capabilities that were more individual in terms of predispositions of being, things that come from informal education and from the context. And then we call it internal capabilities, but you're going to see that they are not capabilities yet. We're trying to figure out what to do with that. And then the combined capabilities, was more like knowing the issues that the university has, and we know it impacts the students and so on, which capabilities, bringing the individual and the institutional together, we have reason to value. And then I will finish presenting a list of capabilities that are aspirational and institutional. So this one is more about which capabilities and functions are considered necessary to promote a Ubuntu-based university community for a sustainable future. And as I said, this is really preliminary findings, so you're going to see how it's open-ended. I just want to mention about the functioning, because in the capability area, we make distinctions between capabilities and functionings. Capability is the real freedom that a person has, and functioning is when you achieve that freedom. So in the literature, often we make the example of someone that is fasting because of political reasons, and then that person has the capability to eat and has the capability, to go and buy food, but is exercising the political agency and not achieving the functioning. In the other case, if we see someone from a deprived community, that person do not have the capability, but still the functioning is the same. So if we look at functioning, sometimes we're missing part of the process of oppression and so on. So that's the reason why the distinction is made. And there is no agreement in the literature, so we tend to use them both when we talk about them, because we think they are both important. So we need to know about the outcome, but also about the real freedom that people has. So you will see now when I'm presenting that some of them might be functionings instead of capabilities, and we are trying to make sense. But in terms of the internal capabilities, this one is the one that we are not reaching any agreement in the group. So we're trying to figure out what we're going to do with this. Because what it came out as we were analyzing together, it was this more kind of ideal, which is like a top kind of umbrella values that were important, and then personality traits. And it's true that the last one, we can kind of convert it into a capability list, but we're not sure, that's what we want to say yet. So we will see what we do. In terms of ideals, it came out Ubuntu, social justice, and freedom, and this is really like extended among all members of the group. And values such as honesty, trust, loyalty, kindness, empathy, and tolerance, acceptance, and recognition. But so far, you can kind of guess, okay, we will get something similar, right, if we do it somewhere else. But the personality traits are quite particular and quite interesting, because if some of you know the South African context, you will find that resilience, perseverance, or inspiring others is really, really important for the survival of the harsh conditions around the student body. So we are thinking whether we're going to keep it as internal capabilities, because we think many of these things come from informal and political education as oppressed communities in South Africa. And that's why we were still thinking if we want to call it internal, because it's coming from that education background. In terms of combined capabilities that we were telling, that is a combination of internal and the institution, here we came up with 3 categories: learning, education, and knowledge capabilities, activism, advocacy, and leadership capabilities, employability and work capabilities, and other that we are not sure we're going to merge into the other categories. So here you see this is more institutionally oriented, that they have reason to value. And because they are activists, that is a really important aspect of what they have reason to value. And we found out that in many cases, not that they have a choice, it's like they have to be activists to defend their rights and the rights of their communities. So in learning and education, we have Umbrabulo, critical thinking and learning, research, creativity and innovation, cultivating love for education, lifelong learning, and self-development. And of course, we're still thinking, if maybe we're going to merge these 3, Umbrabulo, critical thinking and learning. Umbrabulo is a word that means kind of political discussions. So the importance of sitting together to talk about the matters that are politically important to defend our well-being. And but yeah, we're still thinking, because cultivating love was also quite important for the group. In terms of activists, advocacy, and leadership, we talk about to create access, and it was a whole thing whether access is a capability or is integral to many capabilities. So in the literature, access sometimes is seen as a capability and has a lot of importance. in the South African context because of the exclusion from resources, knowledges, and so on. So we will see what happens. It might end up as a separate capability. For instance, navigation is extremely smart, is quite important. Communication, community building, carrying the aspirations of others, solution-oriented, being able to influence others, being able to consult and be consulted, participation and engagement, being able to express oneself freely, collective action, revolutionary spirit, and resilient. And here, I guess I would like to mention, because the conditions in which these activists operate in the campus are quite extreme. They have to be careful, you know, how things are said, not to upset people. The institution is quite strict and not really flexible. So sometimes they don't even have the freedom of free speech. I mean, it's not that they cannot talk, but they have to be really strategic. And that's why this navigation, you know, is quite important, you know, not to end up in a complicated situation with the institution, your lectures, or whoever it is. And especially, I mean, this includes race relations in the campus, which are quite central to the lives of these students. And then in employability and work, it was quite interesting because, of course, you know, I'm European. So when we talk about employability at work, we think about remunerated work. And that was here to do remunerated work and self-sustain. But they mentioned being competent and labor as this contribution to society. So they were talking about do labor for the sake of the community, you know, because a community need to do labor to function, right? And many of this work is not remunerated. So they were meaning like beyond remunerated work. Remunerated work is part of it, but not the whole thing. And this is quite important because it depends from them that they succeed in hard and other things to uplift their families that are, you know, in disadvantaged communities. So that it was quite important. And being competent was also mentioned in that way, like not necessarily as knowing, having a degree or whatever, but actually being competent in knowing how things work, you know, how we can politically understand the complex environment that we have in South Africa and therefore move towards actions. And then the last one that we were not able to classify in this one were to be healthy, which we're not sure if we're going to keep separate, and then to engage and explore, being exposed to other cultures, language, work spaces. Okay, I'm doing good. I'm going to finish the room before. Okay, so this is the last point I wanted to discuss today, and this is the more aspirational kind of a capability list. And this is more aggregated into capabilities as the previous examples, because here you can see that some of them might end up as functionings of another capability. But this one is more, it's just that we're still discussing a lot whether merging some of the categories, because this classification comes especially from analyzing all the issues at the university. So they were all of them coming from specific situations and specific issues that we have at the University of the Free State. And as I said, in terms of Ubuntu, we are not sure we're going to keep it. But yeah, we might end that in using Upilisana, which is more a term about making life livable. So Ubuntu is I am because you are. So is this belief that we cannot be without the other. But it's more like a kind of cosmological, ontological point of reference, like we are not separate, we are together. And it's kind of challenges divisions between a structure and agency. But yeah, the Upilisana is more about this doing, you know, this doing as we walk, you know, making, given the circumstances that we have, which are complex, how do we make life livable for everyone and the community? So yeah, so we might end up changing it, but so far the agreement was to keep it like this in the last workshop that we had. So we came with 9, as I said, some of them might merge. So Unity, capability, humanizing, and people-centeredness it's quite similar. It's just that they're coming from different issues. And that was the reason why, because at the beginning, we were not sure if call it Ubuntu list, because we were not sure whether Ubuntu was a capability in the list, or it was, like the umbrella that is involving all the capabilities. But at the end, we decided that no, Ubuntu is like the umbrella, is related to every capabilities. And you see that the three first are really kind of Ubuntu linked. So in terms of Unity capability, it was about multi-epistemic, multicultural, multiracial, and multilingual institution. And here we have a lot of debates about unity, because of course, in the South African context, because of the division and the division between the different groups in South Africa, unity is a really political word, to come together. But unity can be also exclusionary, because who is the unity? Who is the one there? But at the end, we decided to leave it like this, and maybe later on to discuss it a bit more. The humanizing capability in terms of respect and dignity, tolerance, and acceptance. So you see some links, but not necessarily exactly the same. Because, for instance, in terms of people-centeredness capability, this was coming from the fact that the university is really modified and is an institution for profit. It's almost like a business-run institution. And then, we believe that it's really important that we put people at the center of the institution, and especially people that are struggling within the university. So that's the idea. But yeah, we're still thinking whether these three are going to be together or not, and the function is a specific functions that they will be there. Transformational capability. So this is a really political term as well in higher education in South Africa, because of the transformation of the higher education system after the apartheid regime, and all the aspirations of the nations to create a different kind of institution. But here, what was coming over and over again, it was like the institution was really rigid, and it was inflexible with the conditions that many people that are involved are experiencing, and in many cases are really harsh. So it was a lot coming about, we need an institution, that cares and is able to act, and react to unforeseen circumstances as the pandemic, right? So we need an institution that is an institution, but is moving along, and not moving because, yeah, institutions are moving, are constantly changing, but the point in the group, it was this changing way too slow. So that is what the transformational capability was, like an institution that is constantly moving and is fluid and flexible and evolves quickly with the societal needs that we have at the University of the Free State. Accessibility capability, yeah, access is a big deal in South Africa, and this was coming from a lot of inequalities that students experience when they access facilities. For instance, sport is a big area, gray area in the country, because it's divided among races, and there is a lot of conflict there, but also includes other things like knowledge, technological resources, and academic resources. So being able to make use of the institutional resources and doing it efficiently as well. But again, this, I'm quite sure this will be something similar in a European institution, but the access is much more constrained in the South African. So here access might be, an issue, but a secondary issue. In South Africa is a primary issue, because many times students do not have electricity in their houses, or they don't have laptops. They have never touched a laptop before, a computer before going to university. So then how are you going to use the resources of the university, the computer lab, if you never use a computer in your life? So it's that kind of idea. A special freedom, which is not only referring to physical, but also symbolically, because as you know, moving around in South Africa is a struggle because of inequalities and insecurity suffer by communities. But obviously here it was more about belonging in the space, that you're part of the institution, feeling safe, but also having a safe space. And again, physically and in terms of voicing your ideas and bringing new initiatives, because that is not the case for many activists in the campus, and feeling at home in the institution. So that's more this spatial freedom, the interrelation between the individual and the space. Supported academic capability and inclusive learning capability are really similar. It's just that supportive academic, it was linked to this transformational capability in terms of supporting students with the different learning needs that they have. And inclusive learning, it was more about bringing the interest of the students and indigenous knowledges to the classroom, and being able to choose the ways that you prefer to be learning, if you want to blend it online, physical, but also being to adapt to the diverse learning from a student. So this one might end up like one. Yeah, that's the one. And then the last one is the healing and reparations capability. And this is quite a thing. And actually, I was participating in a panel this week about, we were talking a lot about this, because South Africa has been trying to get rid of statues and names and the legacies of apartheid in many ways. And I think we as Europeans, we have a lot to learn from them. But it's true that they did not allow a space for the emotional, the space to express and the oppression, you know, and the pain that many people carry, not only themselves, but from their families on. And this is quite important because I don't know if you have heard that many people, this is like when women are quickly dismissed because they are too emotional. So Black students are dismissed because they are too picky, thinking about the past, or they're complaining too much, you know, about the racism on campus. And this capability is really important in that case, as you know, being able to critically understand the historical contemporary inequalities that the institution has sustained and maintains, and allow spaces to heal and develop reparation measures, not only at the physical level, but at the emotional and spiritual level as well. So not just changing statues, and of course, you know, we will need to provide a specific measures as we're expecting at the end of the project. But the idea is to provide platforms to express that pain that is carrying there with many students from the past, and even from the inequalities that they are suffering in their lives. Okay, thank you. That's all.
For interesting presentations. Quite enlightening. Very familiar. 20 minutes for questions. Questions? Don't be shy, please.
Okay, guys. Carmen, thank you for your presentation. Amazing and also challenging. Because I was wondering if we use this Ubuntu capabilities list to our university as a way to rethink our university from the colonial perspective, I guess. So thank you, because I think it's a really good outcome for the capabilities to me and also to rethink our university. But in that list, can you complete this?
Yeah.
List? I was thinking if we do the same with our students, staff, maybe the list will be different.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's the point.
Yes, and also thinking about a sustainable future. Maybe there will be some kind of environmental capability
Yes.
And why here is not, what do you think here is not
Yeah, yeah,
such
yeah,
as
Yeah.
regular capabilities?
Yeah, that's the whole thing. Yeah, so well, yeah. So the thing is like we're trying to make sense because the thing is like it's not that environment is not important, it's just that people are dying because of
Yeah.
not having food available. So I think you know Ubuntu has to be seen as of course, you know, as an ancient philosophy, but also as a strategy to uplift the generations that are to come, right? So obviously that's why we have that phase that we call ecologies of knowledges, because one of the members of the group is part of a permaculture group, and he is really a lot into that. And for instance, one of the groups that is now coming in is that one, but obviously also others. But as I said, this is the internal list, and we still have to figure it out where that stands. Because yeah, I mean, because when we were talking about it, they were saying like, yeah, Ubuntu does not take environment out. You know, they were saying like when we go really deep into it, it's part of it. But you see that in the capabilities, it's not there, as you were saying. So we're still thinking, you know, where is going to stand, what is going to be our stand on that aspect of it, and is it separate? Because the thing is like, you know, we might include it as part of capabilities and not as a separate capability, right? So like having dignity is dignity for humans and nature, and not necessarily only like a one extra one. But yeah. Yeah, it's when we had the South African Hub meeting, we were having the same conversation with the team that is working in Rhodes University, because what we see all the time, you know, with working with collectives, is like the priority is to uplift, you know, their families themselves, you know, to help the family to go out of poverty and not necessarily to have concerns about the environment, but making the best. But of course, that has this exploitative background, because first of all is uplifting yourself and your family to a system where you're already disadvantaged, plus not having any consideration about the broader environment and so on. So yeah, thank you for that comment. And in terms of the university list, yeah, that's exactly what we were trying to say. Okay, we work from our university, what is coming out? If someone else, you know, do it in the university, what is coming out? And then what can we talk to each other? You know, what can we learn? Lesson learns, because obviously the things are not the same, because the priorities in the different contexts are different.
Thank you, Carmen, for an interesting presentation. Maybe I should first quickly introduce myself. Stefan Leon, and I will be visiting for 3 months during this summer from the Netherlands with the conference fellowship, and I hope to. So it was great to see how passionate you are about this stuff. That was so clear, and I'm also happy that you and your team that you study this really from within the African context, because it's so easy for all kinds of NGOs with probably good intentions to impose Western ideas or Northern ideas on that context. So really glad about that. My question sort of follows up on your question. I'm looking for, maybe I don't understand the capabilities approach. I really understood that.
Yeah, I didn't explain much.
Oh, but that's up to me. But what is the unique, or what are the unique capabilities that are linked to sustainability? Or is sustainability a case to understand what are the capabilities within this particular context to facilitate institutional change? Because in a way, when I look at this list, I can also say, well, if it's about realizing equality in a society, you can also do sustainability. So I'm a bit puzzled.
Yeah. So thank you for that question. So the thing is like, this is a, because we talk about human development, sustainable human development, right? So the thing is like, because sustainability, it was kind of understood as this imposition, we remove sustainability, and then that's what we call it Ubuntu instead of sustainability. So it will be then changed from that. So then this list will be this institutional list that is for institutional change back towards this sustainability aim, locally based sustainability aspirations.
So what would be different, or do you have an idea about what would be different if, say, we were talking about Ubuntu, but other challenges, some other challenges in this slide? Would the list be different?
And which other challenges? Because the thing is, like for them, when we were trying to change its sustainability for Ubuntu, Ubuntu is part of the main struggle. So the thing is, like, I'm not sure they're really different. I know what you mean. So the thing is, like, what are we talking about if we talk about an equity list?
Yeah, or about
right?
health,
Or about health list. Yeah. But the thing is, like, the intention is to be this kind of, multidisciplinary, not separated, according to, But it will be this institutional based and kind of based in this Ubuntu cosmovision, worldview. So, I understand the point, like what will be a list, like a gender-based list or something like that. But the point is, that's what we're doing with the colleges of knowledges, trying to go beyond this sectorial kind of divisions, between listed. And I know doing that, we can end up, kind of being too broad and so on. But our intention is to bring different perspectives, gender perspectives, more environmental perspectives, more social perspectives, equity, social, But yeah, really something to maybe, because the thing is, like, I'm quite curious, and I've been trying to understand how this, the relation, because when we separated, come into play different kind of knowledges, right? Like knowledge from background of academics and genders, or disciplinary, but also from activists and so on. And I've been quite interested in how participatory projects articulate these different knowledges in different ways, and how inequalities occur, because that's what we were answering with the other question, that Ubuntu's humanness is much more predominant in the South African context, and therefore that takes over the other knowledges, right? And then we end up being kind of not recognizing the others. So I'm myself interested in how is that articulated in the research project, and I will certainly look at how it happens in this way. But we're hoping that this phase of the colleges of knowledges is bringing that, but the intention is to bring different interdisciplinary and sectorial lists. Thank you.
Thanks. Many questions, which is a sign that it's found it's interesting. But I think I will limit myself to a comment following from this out of this list.
Yeah.
My comment is, looking at this list, I'm wondering whether there's any difference if this would be applied, say, to secondary or primary school. My feeling is it's not. That these capabilities, the way you put it there, should be applicable to anybody. And then if you then think of it further, well, these capabilities are really education of capabilities that should be acquired through education in distinctive of what is first. Then the question that follows is why we talk about universities. And I'm struck always when I hear a presentation from South Africa, this question of decolonialization. I can think of an institution that has more colonial undertones than the university itself. So that kind of thing, kind of university where you are, and when you can reach the link with the church, and then from the church to the linguistic industry. So I cannot think of anything that is more the center of imperial colonization than the values that the university embodies. Therefore, I'm a bit surprised that you are then setting up this kind of narrative in the context of a study of university. Shouldn't you really be more interested in destroying university as such as a kind of another for education, and then go on to other things. And connected to this, my second comment is about the issue of the decolonial. What is your personal experience? Because you are not coming from there, you're coming from the north.
Yeah.
And you are applying a conceptual setup that has its roots in power, right? So how can you go more northern and more that framework of analysis that is North America, it's US, it was Tony, right? So, so I'm struggling. I'm struggling with the internal consistency of your argument and narrative.
Yeah, but it's not my argument. Remember that it's the team argument. So I'm hearing the presentation of.
No, come on, you're cheating.
No, I'm not cheating.
I don't buy it.
Okay, you can, but I love the questions. I love to be challenged. So yeah, no, love all the questions. I hope I'm gonna be able to answer, but I'm gonna start with the last one. And I think my argument is valid because I'm hearing the presentation of my colleagues. So as you see, it's not me, it's just the whole team. So obviously when I'm talking, I'm not talking on my name as a European white woman. But yeah, I'm talking in the name of the whole team. And well, anyway, so there are obviously dynamics in the team that are also important to highlight, and of course they are not avoidable because I'm still a white European woman. But it's true that I've been living there for 7 years, so it's not that as you were mentioning, it's not that I came there, you know, and I'm doing this project and I'm coming back. You know, I'm living there for 7 long years. And I'm part of the community in my own way. That doesn't mean that I'm not white. Of course I'm white, but it's funny because I'm not white. I'm white middle, somewhere in between, because I'm not South African white. So therefore, their understanding is it's not that way. I understand that you might not be satisfied by that, but yeah, I think from my side. You know, of course, I'm not bringing my cosmology I'm bringing it, but it's not predominant because the group is South African based. So therefore, that's the reason why all these questions, all these words and ideas and so on. But also keep in mind that even the South African context is not uniform. I mean, in the group, we have students that are from Zulu background, from Xhosa, and they speak different languages. They have different cosmovisions. So I'm there in a plurality, not necessarily as you know, as the if it will be my project, then it will be a different kind of relation. But it's not. It's definitely not. I wanted to mention as well about what was it? The positionality. No, it was something else. Okay, I don't remember. I will come back if I remember what was the other thing. Because it was. Well, okay. Let me come back to the question there to apply to secondary and primary school. So the thing is, like, as I can hear from you, you're not really convinced about the colonial thinking, which is great, because I think we also need the other side, because otherwise we don't challenge each other. But the thing is, like, again, you know, in a country that is so diverse, such as South Africa, the problem is because the capability list at the end up being some kind of ideal kind of framework. Right? But we're trying to bring this down to earth with specific measures that we're going to recommend to the institution. And that's exactly, you know, why context matter and why this project won't be sufficient to do in a school or in a secondary primary school. So institutions will need to revise what this means in practice, because the praxis is different for each dynamics. I mean, there are, of course, dynamics that are similar, but they are not the same. And they also need to give terms to to be measures that are relevant to the context. So yes, I agree that some of them might be, but remember, we disagree with universalistic measures, and that's the primary concern that we have. Because yeah, a measure that might be valid for this specific higher education might not be for a primary. Because for instance, pregnancy is a big deal in secondary schools in South Africa, but in higher education it's more about rape. So this kind of priorities, when we put down the list to praxis, is going to change totally. Yes, we can use the list for conversations, for stimulation, but from my perspective, we will need to, allow the space to reframe the list so it talks to the specific context. That doesn't mean that we can abstract ourselves and create a more abstract list that later on can be applied, but that's not what we're trying with this project. Make sense? Yeah, go.
Yeah. Just one thing. Yes, but the list of capabilities, what you are telling me is that, we go on and on.
No,
but let's go to our point specific. Would be interesting.
Yeah.
What you are telling me is that the expression in terms of policy measures and realities that emerge from the list of capabilities in a university is different from a secondary school.
Yeah.
But that was not my question. My question was the capabilities were the same. So if you tell me that the expression of capabilities is different in university, what you are doing is you are taking for granted that the role of the university as defined is relevant and is adequate. But my point is that if your capabilities are the same across different levels and they are common to the whole educational structure, the capabilities are exactly the same. And I think even the other capabilities are exactly the same. Why they are your starting from the standpoint, you truly find that this is the best design. So I'm kind of going more to the root and making the more radical argument. You're right that the question is the rhetorical, and I'm not quite believing what I'm saying, and using this conclusion. You're right. This was big.
Yeah.
But I think the debate is that it's important from your own narrative that if you're taking this narrative and putting this capability and taking this approach, I think you are really questioning the notion. And probably we would even be closer to this you and I than we could imagine in the beginning. But then let's embrace and say this university, as they set up, tools of imperial colonialism, all of them set up by the do not really serve the capabilities that society.
I see what you mean.
Therefore, we don't need university. We need another form of education.
Yeah. I understand. Yeah. Yes, indeed. Yeah, I see what you mean. The thing is like, that's a complicated question, and I think we're trying to make sense of it because what we see is that many of the students do not want to necessarily change the whole educational system, but there is an incongruence in the way that they aspire to the world and the institution is acting, and the possibilities that changing the institution are, yes.
I think that integration
I know, but the thing is like only one student agreed that way, and the thing is that and this is exactly what I was explaining before about these ecologies of knowledge and how some are going to press more than others, and whether we're going to think alternatively or we're just going to keep in the loop of changing A, B, and C, but leaving the whole educational system the same. Yeah, I mean, amazing question, and indeed, we've been thinking a lot about that. The thing is like, how do we keep, because it's quite interesting, because I'm quite interested in educational systems in Latin America, higher education. And there are much more alternative projects in Latin America than in Africa, because in Africa, the colonization period and the exploitation is much more deep with blackness intrinsic to it and dignity. And what is interesting is that in Latin America, we have institutionalized alternative systems, but in Africa and in South Africa, it's much more informal. There are these alternative educational projects, but they are on the borders, you know, of the national thing. And I remember when I came to South Africa, what was puzzling me all the time is like, why do they want to belong to the Western system? Because I couldn't understand, you know, it was like mind blowing. Like if you play disadvantage in a game that has already the rules, why would you belong to the game and not create alternative educational systems? But I think there is a lot of from my this is just personal opinions, and yeah, there is a lot of belonging and dignity that is there that is not in other, because in Latin America they talk about autonomy, about self-determination. That debate is not there in South Africa. It's much more about recovering the humanity, but recovering the humanity in relation to the Western humanity project. So yeah, thank you for that question. Indeed, it's a huge question, and I guess my expectation was that we will end up in somewhere there, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure what's going to happen, because they want to uplift their families. They want to belong to the economic system that exploit them. So yeah, it's a whole. Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah.
Okay, so one last question and we finish. Okay.
Thanks a lot for the presentation. I think that we are thinking about the diversity. So I want to do a comment. There are some studies that talk about the university mission statements, and they talk about, for example, in the Africa or Latin America, the universities talk about the development. The development is a key word.
Yeah.
Personal development, professional development, technical development, and development. And in Africa too, but in the development countries, they don't talk about development, because they are developed. This is an textual analysis in the mission statements of the universities around the world. And I think I want to know your opinion about how they what is the perspective of the African University about the development, and what they think about this, and because I can see directly this in this book. Maybe this is the objective, that they don't think about development as we concept that and we talk about, and this is this version about development. I want to understand about that, because I don't know nothing about Africa.
Yeah. Thank you for that question. I hope I get it well. The thing is, like, the funny thing is, like, in South Africa, in my university, we talk about development as what development is here. So because it's an imposition, you know, we have to develop, you know, and it's almost like a rhetoric that is repeated, you know, with much reflection about what it means. So the aspiration many times as you said, the thing is, like, now what happened in terms of values and statements of universities in South Africa, I talk more in that specific case, is this rhetoric of Africanizing the universities, because the students are angry, you know, they were protesting, and we need to do something because we're looking back to our colleagues in the UK, because our colleagues in the UK are doing things that we're just ignoring because they are just busy trying to figure out how to be a functional Western university. So the value and the statements of universities are much more about, you know, like togetherness. It's true that they talk sometimes about excellence, and this is more coming from debates about what scientific knowledge is and how we do it and so on. But definitely, I don't think that development is central on the statements and values of institutions, but it's true that it's an ongoing conversation, because everyone is worried about development, and development for them means joining the economic system, raising the unemployment rate, which is lowering the unemployment rate because it's extremely high, and there is a lot of communities just living in township with no economic opportunities, but they still look development as economic development. That doesn't mean that there are alternative positionalities and alternative groups that are trying to push those kind of mainstream debates, right? So there are instead, but I mean, our university has a rector who is an engineer, I think, and he is really, oriented with numbers and making a good business out of the university. So yeah, there are a lot of incongruences as well in the way of doing, the way of many resistances. So I hope I have answered the questions.
That one.
Yeah. But thank you so much. I see we are over time. So thank you for all the excellent questions and for listening to me today and challenging me. I love that. So yeah, and I hope we could shop in the corridors, and yeah, I will be here until Friday.
Thank you.